closest friend. Some craven times I blessed myself with that. At least I was spared that. There had always been Julie, since 5th grade, my heart, my sharer. But Jill was my good friend. We had been soccer moms together and walking buddies, although Jill's swift, balanced walk was my jog. I once kept Belinda at my house while Jill went to the bedside of her beloved father who'd suffered a stroke, just as she kept Stefan at her house with Belinda when they were 7 and both had chicken pox, which somehow neither I nor my husband Jep ever caught. And on the hot night of that fundraising ball for the zoo so long ago, she had saved Stefan's life. Since Jill was a widow when we first met, recently arrived in the Midwest from her native North Carolina, I was always talking her into coming to events with Jep and me, introducing her to single guys who immediately turned out to be hopeless. That hot evening, along with the babysitter, the 2 kids raced toward the new pool, wildly decorated with flashing green lights, vines, and temporary waterfalls, for a night jungle swim. Suddenly the sitter screamed. When Jill was growing up, she had been state champion in the 200-meter backstroke before her devout parents implored her to switch to the more modest sport of golf. And Belinda, at 5, was already a proficient swimmer. My Stefan, on the other hand, sank to the bottom like a rock and never came up. Jill didn't stop to ask questions. Kicking off her gold sandals, in she went, an elegant flat race dive that barely creased the surface. Seconds later, she hauled up a gasping Stefan. Stefan owed his life to her as surely as Belinda owed her death to Stefan. In seconds, life reverses. Jill and I once talked every week. It even seemed we once might have been machetanum, as they say in Yiddish, parents joined by the marriage of their son and daughter. Now, the circumstances under which we might ever exchange a single word seemed as distant as the bony hood of moon above us in the melting darkness. What did she want here now? Would she leave once Stefan came through the gates? In fact, she left before that. She got back into her car and, looking straight ahead, drove off. I watched until her car was out of sight. Just after dawn, a guard walked Stefan to the edge of the enclosure. I looked up at the razor wire. Then, opening the window slightly, I heard the guard say, "Do good, kid. I hope I never see you again." Stefan stepped out, and then put his palm up to a sky that had just begun to spit snow. He was 20, and he had served 2 years, 9 months, and 3 days of a 5-year sentence. 1 year of which the judge had suspended, noting Stefan's unblemished record. Still, it seemed like a week. It seemed like my entire life. It seemed like a length of time too paltry for the monstrous thing he had done. I could not help but reckon it this way. For each of the 60 or 70 years Belinda would have had left to live, Stefan spent only a week behind bars. Not even a season. No matter how much he despaired, he could always see the end. Was I grateful? Was I ashamed? I was both. Yet relief rippled through me like the sweet breeze that stirs the curtains on a summer night. I got out and walked over to my son. I reached up and put my hand on his head. I said, "My kid." Stefan placed his huge, warm palm on the top of my head. "My mom," he said. It was an old ritual, a thing I would not have dared to do in the prison visiting room. My eyes stung with curated tears. Then I glanced around me furtively. Was I still permitted such tender old deeds? This new universe was not showing its hand. "I can stand here as long as I want," he said, shivering in wonderment. Then he said, "Where's Dad?" "He told you about it. He had to see that kid in Louisville one more time?" I told him reluctantly. "The running back with the very protective grandmother. He couldn't get out of it, but he cut it short and he'll be home when we get back. If he beats the weather out of Kentucky this morning, that is." Jep was in only his 2nd season as football coach at the University of Wisconsin.